Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford is by far the biggest fight in boxing. It is also the great divide amongst hardcore boxing fans, as each side is adamant that their fighter will come out victorious. Both sides are equally convinced that the blame for the delay in making the fight can be placed on the opposition of their favorite fighter. But who's right? We take a deeper look into the truth behind Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. On September 15, Terence Crawford appeared on First Take to discuss a number of boxing-related topics. While on the show, Max Kellerman asked, who did he want at 147 pounds? Here's what he had to say.
I always believe in, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And Spence is not the man at 147.
Who's the man?
Keith Thurman.
Based on resume.
Keith Thurman.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Terrence. I really don't.
No, Terrence right based on resume, but what we're talking about is the eyeball test.
I'm talking about the eyeball test.
The eyeball test says Errol Spence.
I understand he's a champion. I understand he's got more fights, but look, when I see Keith Thurman, I see very, very good. When I see Errol Spence Jr., I see special.
Yeah, I do too.
The eye test can lie to you.
The eye test can lie to me?
It can lie to you.
This was fairly weak on Buzz's part. Everybody at the time knew that Spence was the man at 147 pounds, regardless of the resume, and that's what they meant by the eye test. On October 14, while being interviewed by FightHype.com, Errol Spence was asked about the potential of Terence Crawford moving up to 147 pounds. Here's what he had to say.
Man, I don't get knowledge to the politics, man. I really don't care, man, about none of that. I mean, if his name come across the desk, and now shoot me, hey, you want to fight Terrence, this and that, this and that? Okay, let's do it. I mean, I don't care about the politics. He got to prove this, he got to do this, he got to do that. I mean, his name never came across the Hammond desk, or Steven Espinosa never asked me about him or anything like that. So, I mean, I'm not worried about it at all. I mean,
you put a lot of stake in the pound for pound rankings?
And he's across the pond. Me and Keith Thurman haven't fought each other yet, and, you know, we're on the same side of the street. So, I mean, till that fight happened, I don't see the Terrence fight happening before me and Keith Thurman happened.
So even before Crawford moved up to 147 pounds and claimed a welterweight title, Spence believed that fights with the PBC fighters would be easier to make than with Top Rank, which was the primary reason why he didn't go after Jeff Horn, the weakest of the champions at the time. Also notice, Spence didn't mention anything about Terence Crawford needing the belt in order to fight him. That was never a part of the issue. He simply stated he was on the other side of the street. On October 26, Crawford made his move to 147 pounds official when the WBO installed him as the mandatory challenger to Jeff Horn. On June 9th, Crawford stopped Horn in the 9th round, leading 80-72 on all three judges' scorecards. It was official. Crawford had arrived in the welterweight division and was a champion. One thing I would like to address is Section 14D2 of the WBO rules, which states, if requested by a super champion, the championship committee may designate the super champion as the mandatory challenger for the immediate higher or lower division. Because of this rule, many Errol Spence fans believe that Crawford had the same option to become the IBF mandatory challenger. I spent a lot of time reading through the IBF rules, and super champions are not automatically designated as the #1 contender per IBF rules. So this was not an option as some believe it was for Crawford. On July 18th, Terence Crawford won an ESPY for his performances against Julius Ndongo and Felix Diaz in 2017, two fighters whose combined record is 44-9. In response to the many questions to Errol Spence about Terence Crawford's accolades, here's what he had to say at the Danny Garcia, Sean Porter post-fight press conference.
Name me the top guy he fought that's better than Chris Algieri. Nah, they're better than Chris Algieri. Name one guy. Felix Diaz. So you think Felix? I think Chris Algieri beat Felix Diaz. He beat the Russian kid. Adongo just got knocked out by Reese Gregarious later than he did Terence Crawford. So name somebody else. Victor Post. Victor Post, who he beat? Matisse? Matisse, when he showed, when he get hit back, he folded. When Pacquiao hit him back, he folded. Easy. On the speed at 140 with his smoke and mirrors. Jeff Horn. I thought Manny Pacquiao beat him.
On November 13th, the Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia fight was announced. There were mixed predictions on how the fight would play out. Some thought Spence would be too big, with others predicting that Mikey would be too slick. This is also around the time where the criticism of Spence's resume by some of our legends picked up, while Crawford's resume was lauded. The most notable of these voices was Roy Jones Jr. Let's hear what he had to say prior to the fight.
If Spence beats him, there will be, there's always people who criticize, but does he deserve criticism that you're still not proving you're great yet because you beat a guy like Mikey who's moving up, or would that not be fair if Spence could win the fight?
It's not fair because a guy like Mikey asked to fight me. I ain't running from a little guy. I look worse if I run from a little guy. He asked for this. Don't get mad because you asked for this. You asked for it. So why would you say it's not fair to him? It is fair to him. The little guy asked for it.
Errol Spence and Terence Crawford pulled up on each other at the Maurice Hooker fight in late November 2018. This gave a lot of us hope that potentially this would accelerate the fight. Unfortunately, it did not. On March 16th, Errol Spence defeated Mikey Garcia in dominant fashion, grossing 350,000 pay-per-view buys, proving those who said he couldn't outbox Mikey Garcia wrong and showing that he is a pay-per-view star. Here is what Roy Jones had to say after the fight.
That's a good fight, but like I told him, I can't make a prediction on that fight until after I see Spence versus Porter. Right. Spence versus Porter will answer any questions you got about Spence, because I haven't seen Spence in a big fight yet. Spence looks wonderful to me. I'm not gonna lie, he looks good. And I heard about his sparring session with Mayweather and all that, and that's all sounds good, but under the lights is different. You understand me? So I need to see you work under the lights against a guy like a Sean Porter. Now I can evaluate how you look under the lights and say what I think about if you fight Terence Crawford. Right now, I know what Terence Crawford is. I don't know what Spence is. You understand me? Not a knock on either one of them, but Crawford been around long. Crawford have been in the ring with the Gamboas of the world, the Ray Beltrans of the world.
Hold on. The Gamboas and Beltrans of the world? This guy. And this guy. This guy. And this guy. See, this is a part of the hypocrisy as it relates to Terence Crawford. He's being praised by legends like Roy Jones for less than stellar opposition. But let's go a little bit further. Let's look at the best opponents on Terence Crawford's resume, starting with Sean Porter. Really good welterweight, but he's lost all of his biggest fights, including Thurman, Brook, and Spence. Victor Postal. His best win came against Lucas Matisse. Matisse was overhyped because he had power. And then Postal, he was overhyped because he had Freddie Roach in his corner. Khan's best win came against Maidana, pre-Garcia. He was also stretched by a journeyman. Also, he was overhyped because he had Freddie Roach in his corner. And then Gamboa, we've already addressed him. Look, Terence Crawford is one of the best fighters in the world, if not the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. But this whole notion about this stellar resume that he has is completely over-exaggerated. On September 28th, Errol Spence defeated Sean Porter by split decision, grossing over 300,000 pay-per-view buys. It became clear that Spence is the second biggest draw in the sport behind Canelo. Wrapping up the year, Crawford defeated Mean Machine to further cement himself as one of the best in the division. However, his win over Amir Khan earlier in the year only did 125,000 pay-per-view buys. Coming off of successful wins in 2020 where Crawford defeated Carol Brook and Spence defeated Danny Garcia, the interest in the fight was at an all-time high. There was a lot of back and forth between the two fighters in the media concerning the split of pay-per-view revenues. This seemed to be posturing, as Terence Crawford mentioned that he would not take the fight unless it was a 60-40 split in his favor. And Spence posted on his social media that he would go as high as 80-20. Let's hear what they both had to say.
If you can't get Pacquiao, who would you want?
I already said I want Spence.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But that fight not going to happen because he already talking a 60-40 deal. And if it ain't 60-40 in my favor, then that fight is not going to happen. Period.
Okay.
60-40 guy. We 70-30 now. Fuck it. Boy, you gonna make me do 80-20. I'm an 80-20 nigga.
Go ahead and push up Terence Crawford.
On November 20th, Terence Crawford defeated Sean Porter by controversial stoppage in what had been a great fight up until that point. Spence's reaction to the knockout was priceless and echoed the sentiment of the crowd.
Turned and walked. Thurman, Spence, Danny Garcia, all those guys just walked up to 154 after seeing this performance by Terence Crawford.
I'm sorry, I gotta pause right here. This is a little bit off script, but when I heard that comment from hating ass Tim Bradley, I just have to say something. This guy's been hating on Errol Spence for a long time, and I get it. Terence Crawford is his boy, but he's another one that's perpetuating a lot of BS. This is the same guy that said in one breath that there is no other side of the street, but then in another breath, when it was mentioned that when he was supposed to fight Errol Spence, he didn't, he said that Top Rank did not do business with the PBC. Effectively, there was another side of the street. You don't believe me? Take a look.
A champion on that side of the fence. So that
man, I don't care about no side of the fence. For me, I don't care. Side of the fence, this is the world of boxing. I wanted to fight, but check this out. I fought Manny Pacquiao instead of Errol Spence. 1, 2. This is the second thing now. I'm gonna give it to y'all right now. The second thing is that when the hell have we been doing business, or anybody from Top Rank been doing business with Al Heyman? You know what I'm saying? So, bruh, say whatever you want to say. Duck you.
Yeah, Tim. You ducked him. Back to Crawford and Porter. Great fight for Crawford. Showed what he could do at the welterweight division. And here's what he had to say after the fight about Errol Spence Jr. Check it out.
Well, y'all already know who I want. I've been calling them out all day. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll go up to 154. Maybe if Spence get his tail out his butt, he'll fight me. You know what I mean? Whatever. You know what I mean? I will whatever.
After suffering a detached retina and sitting out all of 2021, Errol Spence signed on to unify the titles against Yordenis Ugas. On April 16th, Spence defeated Ugas by TKO. This was the third eye he had collected, along with Danny Garcia and Kell Brook. After the fight, he called out Terence Crawford.
What's next?
Oh, well, everybody know who I want next. I want Terence Crawford next.
You're going to make that happen?
Huh?
You're going to make that happen?
Oh, definitely. That's the fight that I want. That's the fight everybody else want. Like I said, I'm going to get these straps and I'm going to go over there and take his shit too.
All right. Errol, congratulations. Terrific fight this evening.
Thank you. Man down. Strap season. I know what time it is, baby. Terence, I'm coming for that motherfucking belt.
After the fight, Terence Crawford congratulated Errol Spence for a great fight. He also said, "No more talk, no more side of the street, let's go." This tweet got fight fans excited that there was a real possibility these two fighters would get in the ring later that year. About a week later, the two fighters traded tweets as rumors started to swirl that negotiations for the fight had already begun. On May 28th, after the Gervonta Tank Davis versus Rolly Romero fight, Errol Spence confirmed that negotiations for the fight had begun. Here's what he had to say.
Do you know when talks are going to start?
Started, been started.
It's been started. Okay, that's good news then. Is it going in the right direction?
Shit, it's gonna happen.
Is
Is that the only fight you want right now?
Yeah. Errol, you're fairly confident that it does happen. Nothing like gets in the way of negotiations.
Make your money.
All right, 1, 3, 2, 1. All right, we got strike, bro. We're doing you, baby. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You feel 100% it happens.
Oh yeah, it definitely gonna happen.
All right. Thank you, Errol.
Thank you, Errol. If it don't happen, it ain't on my end. You want the mic?
In June, rumors started to surface that Terence Crawford and Errol Spence were closing in on a deal, but Floyd Mayweather disputed that notion, saying that there was still work to do. On July 15, Mike Coppinger joined Max Kellerman on Max on Boxing to talk about the negotiations between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Here's what he had to say.
Where does that fight stand right now?
Max, yeah, I agree. One of the best fights you can make, probably the best fight, and still really close to being made. No real obstacles, I'm told. It's looking like November in Las Vegas. And these guys are on the, I would say, the 2-yard line. I don't see any way this fight doesn't happen. Of course, this is boxing, so you never do know, but I would fully expect Crawford versus Spence November in Las Vegas.
So it seemed like the fight was on the verge of being made, but a couple of months passed by and still no announcement in regards to the fight actually being signed or any tentative schedule associated with the fight, until September 20th, when Lance Pugmire reported that all material terms had been agreed upon for the fight. So fight fans got excited. But he also reported that there were a couple of things that held up the negotiations. Here's what he had to say.
While the talks have been agonizingly long, we've learned from 2 sources very close to the situation that one of the issues that dragged this thing out for as long as it did had to do with Terence Crawford's ties to alleged Irish drug cartel leader Daniel Kinahan. PBC head and Spence advisor Al Heyman wanted absolute assurance, insisted upon absolute assurance that Kinahan had no financial involvement in the fight.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, Terence Crawford had gotten involved with Daniel Kinahan, a known criminal, and Al Heyman and the PBC were concerned, so much so that they needed guarantees from Terence Crawford that Kinahan would have no financial involvement in the fight. More to come on that later in the video. Now, Mike Coppinger of ESPN confirmed that the fight was materially done, but the only issue was it was September 19th when he reported this. He was also reporting that the fight was going to take place on the 19th of November, 8 weeks out, but yet no press run or nothing had been announced. Didn't quite make sense. 11 days later, Mike Coppinger reports that Terence Crawford is working on the short end of the split, but isn't being guaranteed money. Also, he wants transparency related to the expenses. Now, at the time, we didn't understand what transparency meant. We found that out a little bit later. On October 7th, Floyd Mayweather did an interview with Fight Hype, confirming that the fight had not been made, but the fight could happen sometime in the future. Here's what he had to say.
Somebody threw it out there. I don't know who threw it out there. And I'm not here to throw nobody under the bus. They keep on saying this fight's going to happen. And once again, this fight may happen, but further down the future. They said the fight was going to happen, in November?
Mm-hmm. Yep, November 19th, I think.
November 19th. So that's basically we'll say, but a month away, okay? A little bit over a month away, okay? 6 weeks, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? No press tour.
No.
No press conference at all.
No.
Spence didn't post about it.
No.
Crawford didn't post about it. So please stop listening to these inaccurate writers writing about things that they don't know about.
Now, this is the first time Floyd Mayweather actually said that the fight would not happen, that the fight could happen on down the line. But a lot of Terence Crawford fans confused this statement with comments that he made prior. In prior comments, all Floyd said was that the fight was not on the verge of being signed, as some of the reports had suggested. Now, Floyd mentioned in this interview that he wasn't going to throw anybody under the bus, but I guess a few weeks later he decided that he would, because he started to exchange tweets with Mike Coppinger. Here's what happened. On October 20th, we got the first sign that the negotiations associated with this fight may be falling apart, as Errol Spence tweeted, "Nigga been stalling for months. I could have fought in November." Now, Errol Spence had taken a silent stance in regards to what was going on with this fight, so this was definitely a bad sign. Later that day, Mike Coppinger reported that Terence Crawford would take on David Avanesian on December 10th, live on BLK Prime pay-per-view for $39.95. BLK Prime was an unknown entity and still is an unknown entity within the sport of boxing, and this sent shockwaves through the sport. Now, many were critical of Terence Crawford's decision to face David Avanesian instead of fighting Errol Spence in 2023. On November 1st, he took to his IG Live to address the criticism. Here's what he had to say.
We didn't get a contract until August. It wasn't nothing. It was initial proposal. It wasn't even a contract. It was a proposal. Basically, the negotiations of what a contract would look like before we actually got the actual contract. I was a good dude, man. I was a, charming guy. He's a cool dude. I get advice from other guys in PBC. They tell me, be careful, make sure the deal is right. They tell me, make sure you don't get fucked. I have two companies give me and Spence $25 million guaranteed. So a real guy like myself, I call Spence. He like 25 million, what about the back end? But one thing about me and I would say the difference between me and the difference between Spence is I'm really my own boss now, and he's not. I'm the one sitting at the table talking directly to these high individuals. You know what I mean? Errol Spence wasn't at the table. I proposed it to Al. They claim they know you. Al told me straight up, I'm not letting nobody touch this fight. But I'm like, why? He like, why would you want to put a ceiling on yourself? Why you want to put a cap on yourself? I'm like, well, that's not putting a cap on myself if this company is taking a risk. As negotiations still drag on, and I had stated that I wanted to fight in this year, why don't you get Spence and you, since you his representative, and I'll get myself and my lawyer, and we just make this fight, anything we gotta do, we can do it right there and sign, seal, deliver. And Al told me straight up, that ain't never happened in the history of ever. It's the first time for everything. I never heard of a fighter ever taking zero guarantee in a fight. I'm the only one that was taking all the risks. I take no guarantee. I take, the less end of the money. Whatever it is you want, I take it because that's how much confidence I got that I'm gonna beat that man. I just, wanted a little transparency. Of course, I want to be able to write off on, things that's gonna affect my check. Fight Boots, or why you didn't fight Ortiz. I always fought in my mandatories about to fight a guy that he promised and he swore that he wasn't going to fight, which is Keith Thurman. We're going to turn up with BLK time. You know what I mean? We gonna do our thing, man. We stepping up to the plate, man. They turning boxing around, man. All the biggest fights, you know what I mean, going through them.
Now, Terence Crawford dared Errol Spence to dispute the claims that he made on his IG Live. And one day later, Errol Spence decided to do just that, igniting a Twitter exchange the likes of which we have never seen between two boxers, with each accusing the other of lying. I want to take a second to address some of the statements and claims made by Terence Crawford in his live and tweets. Number one, Crawford was taking all the risk. Well, we know that Crawford agreed to a 35-65 split with no guarantee up front. Errol Spence also agreed to no guarantee up front, so they were both taking the same level of risk. Number two, Crawford is his own boss. We've told you on multiple occasions on this channel that bosses cut checks, they don't ask for them. And in the words of Floyd Mayweather, if you can't front a fighter $3 or $4 million up front, then all you are is a symbol. Number three, transparency. Well, we know that Terence Crawford not only wanted transparency to the expenses, but he also wanted the ability to control them. Terence Crawford has never led a promotional company. What does he know about expenses that are required or expenses that are not required? This was a ridiculous ask from Terence Crawford. Number four, a $50 million deal from a hedge fund. Now, we know that Terence Crawford was not transparent in regards to who was leading this hedge fund when Errol Spence inquired. Not only that, supposedly the hedge fund manager knows Al Heyman. So why would the hedge fund manager go to the B side when they know the manager of the A side? As I mentioned earlier, the PBC wanted assurance that Daniel Kinahan would not be involved with this fight. This may have been an opportunity for Daniel Kinahan to backdoor his way into the fight, so the PBC was never going to entertain. Number five, always faulted mandatories. Now, we know that Terence Crawford is a master of trying to spin a narrative. He does this because he wants his fans to grab onto these narratives and try to paint a different picture. This is just another weak attempt to create and change the narrative. Number six, Spence said he would never fight Thurman. Well, we know that currently Thurman is his mandatory. Now, in the same breath, he will say that he said that he would never fight Keith Thurman, but then also say that he needs to spin the block. At the end of the day, we all know that Errol Spence wants to be undisputed. So without the titles, he's not spinning anything. You can't have it both ways. And finally, he can't show the contract to prove his claims. Now, let me share a definition with you. This is the definition of disclosure. Disclosure is the action of making new or secret information known. Notice that it doesn't say anything about whether it is verbal or written. So at the point in which Terence Crawford went live and started to disclose details in regards to the contract, he was in violation of any non-disclosure clauses. So why not show the contract? This is the narrative that Terence Crawford wanted to paint for his fans for them to grab onto, and they fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. On December 10th, Terence Crawford defeated David Avanesian by KO in the 6th round. Avanesian was having some success earlier in the fight, but started to fade in the 6th as Terence Crawford started to pick up the pressure. Many will attribute the success of David Avanesian earlier in the fight to the ring rust of Terence Crawford. However, Terence Crawford has shown that he has slowed down in the last several fights. Here's what Crawford had to say after the fight.
What does the future hold? All of boxing world's waiting. Is Errol Spence next?
Well, listen, I'm a free agent. You know, like I said before, you know, this was a one-fight deal. You know, hopefully, you know, we can go to the drawing board.
On December 17th at the Frank Martin fight, Errol Spence addressed the failed negotiations between himself and Terence Crawford. Here's what he had to say.
If he did everything that he could to make the fight happen, the fight would have happened, man. You know what I'm saying? But Unfortunately, he didn't, and he wouldn't have battled the wrong way. If he was just, been on the up and up and just been like, hey, I've been talking to the guys. I'm fighting this guy for $10 million. It's an easy fight. I'm going to make this money right quick and I'll be right back. You probably let him do it. I'm not hating, get your money, man. But, the way he went about it and then, trying to blame my side for, messing up the negotiations, I feel like that wasn't right at all. So, but, hopefully, I can spin that block again and, go to negotiations and try to fight him because it's a fight I really want. So, hopefully we can make it happen next year.
Okay. A few days later, on December 20th, Terence Crawford tweeted at Errol Spence, "I'm ready when you want to spin the block. Just giving you a heads up is all." Since when are business negotiations initiated on Twitter? Terence Crawford has direct access to both Errol Spence and Al Heyman. This is where Jermell Charlo meant when he said clout chasing. Because obviously, if he really wanted to start negotiations, he would call those men directly. This is just another ploy by Terence Crawford to self-promote himself. Period. On January 10th, rumors started to circulate that Errol Spence would face Keith Thurman at 154 pounds. Not only that, this fight would satisfy his mandatory. By and large, this confused boxing fans. Jose Suleiman, president of the WBC, joined the Boxing Voice to address the issue. Here's what he had to say.
That after the fight, that fight can potentially satisfy the 147-pound mandatory, or is there no way that the rules allow for him to fight above the weight without the title on the line and still satisfy the mandatory?
Well, it will be an official WBC event. That is certain. I don't want to speculate. I just want to see the fight take place. The other ranked fighters, Ortiz, he's committed to another organization. So there is no hurry right now. Let's see what happens in the fight, and then we will assess once we have all the facts of what happened inside the ring.
Now, Suleiman was fairly vague in what he was saying, but from what I gathered, he was basically saying, depending upon who wins, whether it's Errol Spence or Keith Thurman, if they decide to stay at 154, they will not be made the champion. If they decide to come back to 147 pounds, then they would remain as champion. So with that being said, it seems like Errol Spence is setting himself up again to spin the block. On January 28th, Oscar De La Hoya posted a picture of himself along with Bernard Hopkins and Terence Crawford. Now, the Angry Man podcast predicted that Terence Crawford would face Alexis Rocha next. This confirmed what the Angry Man podcast already believed, but not only that, this also spurned rumors that Terence Crawford may sign to Golden Boy Promotions. If this were to occur, Oscar De La Hoya's plan is to have Terence Crawford face Rocha, then Virgil Ortiz, which would effectively kill the Errol Spence fight, considering that Errol Spence will move up to 154 pounds after the Keith Thurman fight if he does not get Terence Crawford. Now, there's a number of different topics that I could have addressed in this video, including who ducked what young champion, so forth and so on. Did Jaron Ennis do this? Did Errol Spence duck this? Did Terence Crawford duck that? But I chose not to cover those things because at the end of the day, none of it affects the fact that these two gentlemen have not gotten into the ring. Now, it's clear to me that one side of this equation has not done what's necessary in order to make this fight. I'm of the mindset currently that this fight will not happen. And it's because one side of this equation is not interested in necessarily making this fight. There is a theory out there that it's a possibility that Terence Crawford will sign with Golden Boy and will wait for Errol Spence to move to 154 so he can collect the titles against the younger opponents. We'll see if that happens, but I sincerely hope this fight will happen, but unfortunately, I don't believe it will.